Hey, what's going on, everybody? Americana back here with another video. Last week, I walked you through my exit plan after Bitcoin lost $98,000. But sitting with that plan and watching the market, I just couldn't shake something. The dynamics that we followed for months are still playing out. And if they continue, I can't justify saying we're in a bear market. So I rebuilt my plan. I built a custom indicator to catch tops and bottoms across any asset. And on Bitcoin so far, it's 3 for 3. That changed a lot as now I have a second layer of confirmation outside of price structure. So let's get into the video. All right, what's up, everybody? I'm probably showing up like absolute dog water on camera because it's nighttime. I refuse to have my light on while I'm working. So you guys are going to get me in the dark for this week's YouTube videos. Anyways, this is what the indicator looks like. We can toggle this on here. They have like histogram stuff. These are divergences if you want to remove those, and then the actual indicator itself. Blue line is just separately, I've attached the 21-month moving average. And yeah, I'll have a full video on this indicator at some point this week. It's not going to be available for anybody, no clients, nobody but myself. That's for the macro side of it, so probably like daily time frame and up. But I am working on just taking this exact same concept and lowering it down to, or bringing it down to lower time frames, and I'll give that away for free. You guys can have it. You can try to trade with it. You can help it in your trades and things like that. It's not going to be the best on lower time frames because it was made for the high time frame, but it can give you an extra sense of confluence or just reassurance outside of whatever system you have to trade, that hey, we might be looking in the right direction or in the wrong direction, or placing stop losses in certain areas, maybe TPing early if you see certain signals, stuff like that. So kind of just a potential backstop for your trading. If it does work out, if you guys do have success with it, congrats, you got it for free, because at some point I'll probably end up selling it, but I'll honor the fact that you guys were early in beta testing and stuff like that. So anyways, without getting into that too much, let's kind of start on the video. All right, I made a few changes to the camera. Hopefully that helps. I think a good place to start is probably going to be kind of a recap of what our plan was originally. I think the new information we do have from this indicator, it's not meant to fully flip the plan on its head or just go against it or negate the whole thing. I'll go through a couple different scenarios here. You guys will see kind of what I'm talking about, and you guys will understand that it's more so, like I said, adding another layer of confluence, that if we see these things at levels we had kind of already predetermined that we would be getting to and maybe potentially even scaling out, that's going to add another layer of confluence with also a little wiggle room in there to end up not selling on a bounce to 98 or $110,000. If we get the bounce, potentially waiting for later for some sort of sell signal to show up. So quick recap of kind of the plan in general, right? We look at monthly MACD that confirmed bearish just this last week. Okay. I don't negate all of the dynamics that we still have in play. I'm still holding on. I still want to be as bullish as I can be. There is still potential for the cycle that everybody has come accustomed to, the cycle that everybody knows and loves. Bitcoin goes parabolic, altcoins go crazy, things like that. But we are at a point in the market, right? We're up from my personal like average price here. We're still up 300% at the top here, 500%. So it's kind of time to have the understanding that, like, if we do roll over, if we see price structure losing, if we see momentum being lost, that yes, bear market can potentially be in. And just because it was lower than people expected, or not as long if some people were expecting extended cycles, altcoins didn't go and things like that, that when the data comes in, I simply have to put a plan together to protect myself, because once that monthly momentum is lost, right? Looking at something like this, okay, a lot of complacency in here. Can something similar to that happen? Yes, absolutely. And I want to not see that as a non-zero chance. I don't want to ignore that by any means. And it does make you have to adjust your plan, and you do have to respect it when Bitcoin's going to move and price action is going to play out. Like I said, I was super bugged on it. It doesn't seem the same. It doesn't seem like a typical cycle. The sentiment never got to the places that it's typically gotten, and I kind of wanted to know why. So I, like I said, dove in and made this indicator, and I'm kind of ranting and getting sidetracked. So let's jump back on task here. But original plan was we have a level at this $98,000. And then we also have our fib retracement levels. This is 108 to like 116. I just kind of say 110 to give a rough estimate. But again, if we're looking at past cycles, we could say that right about in there is our 98K level, and then retracements are going to be wherever they're going to be at on here. So the original plan, like I said, okay, expecting a bounce to come in. If we at any point in time or earlier last week or whenever, if we had closed underneath this EMA, I would have sold everything. I covered that in many videos of it's like, hey, when we lose this 21-month moving average, it doesn't just mean bear market. It doesn't just mean that you're confirming a bear market or well within a bear market. Losing this level is always led to the phase just before capitulation. When we lost this level in here, this is like Three Arrows Capital, Celsius, FTX, all of that drama, very capitulative vibes, and the same thing for other cycles as well. So that was a part of the original plan. That's still a part of this plan. If we lose basically $86,000 on the monthly time frame, kind of have to think about cutting things. And if we do lose it and we reclaim and we go up from there, well, then I'll be the fool. I'll have to find a way to hop back in or do something at that point in time. But it's just a signal that I don't want to ignore, especially with losing the monthly time frame or the momentum on the monthly time frame, the MACD. So anyways, the original plan was, hey, likely going to get at least a bounce back to 98K. We'll let go 50% there. And then, hey, maybe we need to chop around, whatever we need to do, get back up into these retracements. Market gets excited again. Maybe Bitcoin dominance is declining hard at the time, and then we kind of roll over from there. Not to say that it would be a copy and paste fractal from this cycle, but some sort of bounce, and then we have our levels mapped out. This also, I pointed out, lines up with liquidity levels. Lots of liquidity around there at $98,000. I think it's like maybe up to like $11 billion in shorts. I don't want to speak wrong because it was like 6. The last time I really remember it was like 6 and like maybe 15 total once we got up to like 110. But again, another liquidity cluster there at 110. To kind of circle back on two things just so you guys can see and I'm not bullshitting you. Okay, here's our losing on the weekly time frame of that 21-month moving average, losing on the weekly time frame. So a lot of confluence for a bounce with that 21-month moving average too, right? If we did lose it, like let's say we lost it this week, guys, we are potentially, at that point, let's see, this is April to November, however many months that is. Why am I blanking? 8 months, something like that. This is literally happens within a month, we find a bottom. And then this is October to August. Really, you could say that was a potential bottom in there in January. So 3 months to another 8 months there. But potentially, if we do lose that like this week or something, we're way deeper in this bear market than anybody expects. And my plan would, even for the bear market, likely change. Probably wouldn't be as deep of a correction or as long of a correction if we were to lose it like this week or something. So that's kind of been my thoughts on that. And then I also want to point out as well, we have the monthly MACD cross. I don't know if you guys can see it. This little green bar that we have on each cycle. That's the week we've gotten our monthly MACD cross confirmation. It's not an exact science saying that, hey, we'll get a bounce or get some sort of chop. This is one of the cleanest examples we have because it did come after that monthly MACD cross. But you can see, each cycle, hey, like once we did get that initial pullback and then around the time, of this monthly MACD cross and things like that, we were seeing, quick pops in price and then lining that up with this cycle, not 98 to 110 wouldn't be too far-fetched. Again, you see the same thing in there as well. So that was kind of the two basis points of the previous plan that we had, right? Don't want to lose that EMA, letting go 50% at 98K, letting go the rest in there. And then how was I going to handle, getting back in the market? Well, if Bitcoin was able to clear fibs, close above the range high, maybe total 2 gets a breakout, wherever that total 2 breakout has to come in. Once total 2 went in for its back test, right, that's where I would enter the market in altcoins only. Wouldn't be interested in Bitcoin anymore, because if we do get this, right, Bitcoin dominance would be declining into like some sort of parabolic phase. In Bitcoin, at that point in time, you're going to want to be in altcoins. Okay, so that's kind of how I would handle that. Nothing about that has changed when it comes to how I would jump back in or that 21-month moving average, but the plan around this $98,000 to 110K area has changed. So I'm kind of dragging this out, but one more thing, more reasoning, talking about why the plan is changing a little bit, right? We see all of these sell signals, right, from this new indicator, right, coming in around the time of this MACD cross, but also, once the top was confirmed to be in is when we had these things show up. Okay. Also timing out with bottoms pretty closely, catching kind of the first decent pop out of there. But what ends up being, the macro bottom for the entire cycle. So we have not had this signal show up. That makes me curious. All right, if we haven't had it show up, on top of the fact that we're still seeing dynamics play out, I become a little bit curious as to why that's happening, what's going on, potential case for higher. So does open me up to going higher a little bit more so than just the dynamics alone. And I want to make sure my plan accounts for that, so I'm not, losing, not tax write-offs, but the tax incentives right now. I'm in long-term gains, so if I stick to the same plan and hold the same coins and things like that, if I'm selling XRP at $5, $6, $7, $8, $10, not having to hop back in or something like that, it's going to save me money on taxes. Just ease of mind, not having to worry about, is there going to be a place for me to jump back in? Did I just, yes, it was for good reason. We've seen what's happened. We have MACD crosses, we have structural similarities and things like that. So yes, there was good reason for me to let go in here. But, does everything people are saying come to fruition? QT ends and Fed this and liquidity that, and we end up rolling out of here. It's always a possibility, or that's always been a possibility. But with this indicator and having this not have flashed, I myself am more open to that possibility in general. So let's just go ahead and start with the most straightforward plan, and what also happens to be the one that is potentially differing from the last plan that we talked about. But getting up to, $98,000, 110, I'm not going to paper hand this. I'm not going to paper hand this anymore. If we do not get a sell signal, right? If we don't get a sell signal here and we don't get a sell signal here, even if this thing goes up to these levels, right, and comes back down, right? If we don't have a sell signal pop up, I'm not letting go. There's some other things that we'll cover this week, indicator related, just on like kind of current price action, but I'm just strictly going to talk plan in this video. So just to recap that, if we get back up to 98, we get back up to 110, I'm, like I said, not letting go of anything. If, we roll over here and the sell signal comes there, I'll be happy to let go of it. If we roll over there and get no sell signal, but lose the 21-month moving average, I'm happy to let go there. But not getting a sell signal into this kind of chop phase would be something that we haven't, previously seen through each cycle when we look back at what this indicator has done, right? Sell signal into the pump, into the chop phase, into the pump or chop phase if you're looking at this one, into the kind of dump underneath the SMA there if you're looking at that one. So now, like I just showed, looking at a 2018 kind of style of correction. Option 2, if we get to 98K, let's say we get to 98K and we get a sell signal right at $98,000. Well, I'd let go of everything. If we get to 98K, pull back, and then get into fibs, and we get a sell signal into the fibs, This would be like almost damn near perfect confluence with what I've been saying of like getting back to this retracement, getting back to these key levels and rolling over from there, kind of my initial idea. But now with this indicator and with this confluence, if we get a sell signal at one of these points, right now I have the clarity to just fully let go. Because originally, let's say the sell signal, I didn't have the indicator, but somewhere out there in the ether, it was flashing, and I was only letting go of 50% at 98K. Well, that, it helps me, but it doesn't. It's not perfect. And then like the scenario I talked about, if we don't get it at all and it continues through the fibs and things like that, I want to be exposed to the market for that. So again, option 2, we could follow the exact same plan. We could get back to 98K level, whether we pull back small, medium, large, whatever. Could get back to the 110K level. But if we have a sell signal show up at that time, just gives us the extra confidence that we need to be like, hey, probably as good a time as ever to kind of let go of things and reassess. Because if let's say we get back to 110 and we get a sell signal, and then we dump underneath the 21-month moving average, and then we reclaim it the next month and go on from there, I'm okay with how I played that. If something that dirty comes in, I'm okay with how I played it, because the other option is, not selling in here, not leaning on the sell signal, and then you're stuck down here and you're like, damn, like do I hold for lower? What's going on at that point in time? It's just not very clear. Again, not likely that we would get a reclaim once losing that EMA, but just pointing out that if something crazy was to happen, again, I would just have to be okay with it, with the understanding that like I have all the confluence I need, monthly MACD cross, structural shift, potentially, some of the dynamics reversing at that time if we're losing key levels, or maybe even into the pump, length of the cycle, things like that, kind of seeing everything that I would need to have seen with that sell signal as just that extra layer of confluence and confidence that, hey, I'm doing the right thing. This is the time to let go. All right, gonna go ahead and draw this EMA out here again. Let's say, you always have to think, how could you be wrong, or what could you be missing in the situation? But let's say we don't get back to the 98K level. Okay, so we don't get back to this level, and we don't lose the SMA, the 21-month SMA, right? But price just kind of tightly ranges around here. Maybe we dip below but close the week back above, whatever have you, right? But we don't get back to 98K. We hadn't had a sell signal yet. There was never an opportunity to even scale out on a bounce. No relief bounce came. Simply just flat, stagnant price action. Hypothetically, in this scenario, let's say a sell signal shows up in there. Basically, if one of these sell signals on the weekly time frame shows up at any point in time before we have cleared these fibs, I'm going to be very cautious, and I'm going to be worried, and I'm going to be letting go of things. So same thing, if that happens in here, even if we're not at $98,000, $110,000 when it happens, I'm okay taking the risk, taking the bet that, hey, I got to sell my Bitcoin and altcoins at, 94,000 instead of the $98,000 bounce, or instead of the 110 bounce. And again, just something I would have to be okay with. A lot of things are behind that, a lot of reasoning behind that. One being, like I said, losing this EMA has never been good for crypto. Getting these sell signals has never been good for crypto. And just because we're sandwiched in between two price levels doesn't mean that I'm going to hold out waiting for this or even that, right? It's just not something that I want to do. Market has already been confusing enough as of late, so I'm not trying to even decipher what the next move is going to be, to a T. Within reason, I'm laying out kind of what can happen in the market and what I'm going to do if those things happen. A bunch of different options, and we're just going to see which one plays out, and we're already going to know how to act accordingly when that time comes. So that was option 3, and then option 4, really quickly. Again, I've said it like 20 times in this video. Lose the 21-month moving average. It's likely not good times in crypto. It's likely, or it likely means, we are on the capitulation leg, into the bottom of Bitcoin for next cycle. All right, so in summary, we got our 4 options, but I think this plan just protects us a little bit better. We were very worried about downside risk over the last 2 weeks. Once we lost that 98K level, we've so far bounced, or at least found some temporary support on the 21-month moving average. That needs to hold. Do not want to lose that on the weekly. But a lot of weird things happening. These pullbacks were much greater on this initial leg. We're talking like 40 to 50%, right? This has been a 30% pullback. We immediately got to this 21-month moving average even before any sort of sell signal came in. This didn't happen till almost a year after the top in two of the 3 cycles, and then and this one, let's see, November to end of January, so 2-3 months after this one as well. It's been 2 months now since October 6th, so not super out of the norm for out here. But my point is, we're kind of prices squeezing. We still have Bollinger Bands as tight as they've ever gotten. It's kind of my thought that there's some sort of massively volatile move coming out of the market soon. Okay, whether that be us losing the EMA and I'm not sticking around for it, or us going on to go much higher, which with this new plan I will actually be sticking around for. And then if this thing drags out for longer and some of these EMAs and things like that have time to catch up, and we get a sell signal in here, right? Again, like I said, I'm happy to exit at that point. I wasn't going to make this video about this, and I hesitate to do so, but just pointing out kind of another bullish case when we look at this indicator. When we look at past cycles, this divergence up here, right? This bearish divergence is working off of this custom momentum indicator in here. And what it does is if we get a higher close on the price chart, but a lower close on momentum, it signals this bearish divergence. Opposite of that will give you a bullish divergence. As you can see here, timed it out. 2, we don't have data on this top back here. I'd like to assume that it worked then, but I can't. But anyways, 2 of we're on the 3rd cycle, so really 2 for 2 on cycles that we have data on nailing to the month, the top of the market, and then also the bottom as well. This is not something that has showed up yet. We have had no higher monthly closes to even give us a divergence. At the same time, we have not had a lower close on monthly momentum yet. The monthly close just opened yesterday. Okay, so this thing is opening down, yes, as price has opened down, but we still have a whole month to watch this play out. We still have a whole month to see if this momentum, let's say we get to 110 and it's reclaimed or something like that. Is this momentum now making new highs on here? It's yet to be determined, but not something to worry about right now. But also want to point out, like, hey, we haven't had this kind of classic top and bottom pattern come in. These are not buy and sell signals that we saw with those triangles or with the large triangles. These are just bearish and bullish divergences. I hesitate to show this as well, but screw it. We'll go ahead and talk about it. We'll go ahead and start bringing it up. But Bitcoin closing under about $108,000 on the month or on the year would not be good. So this is a 12-month chart, yearly chart of Bitcoin. This cycle in here, this body got over. Not to say that didn't end up being the top. That's not the point that I'm trying to make. But if we closed underneath 108K on the year, we're basically in this swing pattern. You guys have seen me trade, or I don't know if you guys have seen me trade this, but you guys have seen me maybe talk about it or mention it. But this is just a swing fail pattern, wicking out, closing underneath. You would be targeting about $40,000 on Bitcoin. Not saying that that's Pico bottom, but that would mean, hey, in the next 12 months, starting once next January begins, this pattern would be in play, and that's not something I want to mess with to start my year, especially if we're getting sell signals, especially if we're not reclaiming 98, 110, especially if we're losing the 21-month moving average, all those things kind of setting up for a pretty nasty year. Even if people do think, hey, this cycle's different and it's going to go on to 2028 and 2027. We were just waiting for Q1 of 26 this whole time, guys. Just like everybody said, we were just waiting for Q1 of 26. I'd be pretty worried. But what do you do with that information now? Well, if that would break Bitcoin cycle, losing monthly momentum on here could potentially break the cycle as well, right? Here's another example. Price didn't close higher, but we did get that swing fail pattern, and we also did get a lower monthly close, right? And the next month, 50% dump. Sorry, I kind of lost my train of thought there. But my point is, we're going to have to see some follow through in the next month, really. If we don't get follow through in the next month, Bitcoin's monthly MACD just gets another red month. Not to say that has to flip that next month to not be bullish, but it's, definitely going to have a strong red month on there. If we don't get a pump in Bitcoin this month, we likely get lower on this momentum indicator as well, which I would not fade this one either. Here's our first lower monthly close. Again, that's why it times up with the bearish divergences, but would not fade that signal either. So got to correct this by the end of the month, and then also that yearly swing fail pattern in play as well. Something to be cautious of and worried about. And typically, I sent this the other day to clients. It's like, looking at yearly charts typically don't help you, because if I'm like, hey, it's April and by the end of the year we have to close over XYZ price, who knows what path we're going to take to get there, what that journey is going to be like, and how we'll end up. And maybe I'm waiting around for 8-9 months for nothing to happen, or it to happen not in the way that I thought. All right, there's plenty of ways and time and room to be wrong in that sense. But when we have the yearly close literally lining up with the end of next month's close, and we're watching next month's close, and we're watching the yearly close, it does actually give you something to look out for. So keep an eye out for that. I'll update as that becomes relevant again towards the end of the month. I'll probably update on this chart. You guys will see me use these indicators as well, but hopefully that plan makes sense to you guys. Again, the only thing we really changed is adding the option to not sell into that 98,000 110K level. It is a risk if you're somebody who's just, I'm beat, I'm tired, I can't take this market anymore, I need to get out. If that's you, then maybe you don't change your plan. Take the 98K, take the 110, hop back in if total 2 ends up rejecting. But I wanted to throw this in there, at least for my personal sake. I'm willing to take that risk, right? I want to see a sell signal show up. I want to see when it shows up, where it shows up. And then in the meantime, if we lose that 21-month moving average on the weekly, cut it there. Likely buyback much lower very soon, right? So it's not the end of the world in that sense. Got a lot of ideas on what this bear market could look like if we are to get that, whether shorter, not as much of a drawdown, whatever have you. We'll cross that bridge when we get there. But like I said, hopefully this stuff made sense. If you guys have questions, as always, I'm here for y'all, whether it's Discord, YouTube, whatever. I'll make sure I get back to you. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.